The morning began with a sunrise no one had time to notice. Admiral Naomi Reyes stood at the glass of Sol Defense Command, coffee cooling in her hand, watching the blue rim of Earth roll into light. 17 human worlds spun out there now, dusty ports, green valleys under new suns, stations threaded along mineral belts like beads on a wire. We had grown in the way young species always do. Clumsy, fast, hungry. Alarms tore through the building and turned every hallway into a tuning fork. "Multiple contacts," said the watch officer, voice tight. "Unknown hull forms, 12, no, 14. A wall of displays flowered with silver shapes sliding into the outer system as if they had always been there. They glowed with a pearly radiance and moved with the confidence of old predators. "Open a channel," Reyes said. Her voice was calm enough to trick hearts into slowing. The face that answered was a mosaic of living facets, an intelligence refracted through crystalline planes. "I am High Legate Iscarel, speaking for the Continuum of 12, it said, voice like chilled bells. "You will listen, you will not speak." 14 alien envoys materialized across the screen, a column of living vapor in a grav cage, a braided machine of silver roots, a brittle insect choir. "Humans," the legate continued, "you have expanded without assent. You disrupt equilibrium. The Continuum has maintained peace for 10 millennia. You are not yet qualified to walk so far." Reyes folded her hands behind her back, a schoolchild in a principal's office. "Terms?" she asked when it allowed her to speak. "Abandon all colonies beyond this cradle, accept protectorate status. Submit defense, trade, and reproduction quotas to Continuum review. You have 72 planetary hours." The legate's facets pulsed. "Blue-white, if you refuse, we remove your species from the ledger. There will be no cruelty. There will be no suffering. There will be absence." In the quiet that followed, the room became a gallery of held breaths. The Continuum pretended at mercy with the same ease tyrants have always used for ceremony. Reyes thought of old American civics. Governments derive just power from the consent of the governed. She thought of how empires decorate the word peace to hide the word obedience. She thought unexpectedly of her abulo's hands teaching her to tie a fishing knot that never slipped. "Transmit our acknowledgement," she said, "and route me secure to the president." President Michael Harper looked like a man who had been given a future on one page and a funeral on the next. "Tell me we have options, Admiral." "We do," Reyes said. "They're not polite options." He swallowed. "The contingency. Protocol Janus," she said. "Authorize deep relay Kestrel, wake the black line." For a long moment Harper stared past the camera, seeing the same maps Reyes did, blank budgets, hollow asteroids with names that didn't exist, crews whose birth certificates folded into numbers. 30 years of being told by columnists that paranoia was un-American, 30 years of engineers building anyway. It was an old American habit, hope loudly, prepare quietly. "Authorized," he said, voice steady. "On my authority and the consent of Congress in closed session, recorded and sealed. Win the peace, Naomi, not just the war." "Copy," Reyes said. "One more thing. Order aggressive evacuation drills on the colonies. Make it messy. Make it noisy. Let them think we are frightened." "Isn't that dangerous?" "It is bait." When the call ended, Reyes stood alone with Earth turning under her and 14 patient knives waiting far away. She remembered a lecturer at Annapolis. The first duty of a free people is to decide they intend to remain free. Laws, markets, treaties, none of it matters if that intention fails. She set her empty cup on the ledge, the small sacrament of beginnings, and spoke to the room that carried her words into 1,000 headsets. "All stations, execute Janus protocols, confirm Kestrel link, and someone call Chaplain O'Rourke to the ready room." The watch officer blinked. "Ma'am," Reyes half smiled. "Because the line between justice and vengeance is one conversation thick, and I want ours recorded." Deep in the belt, silent systems woke beneath mountains of stone. Cryopods warmed like a field of frost-catching sun. Lights bled into the black on hulls that did not reflect. Somewhere out beyond Mars, a beacon whispered a single word that meant a generation of secrets ending. "Awaken." We are a polite people, Ray's thought, watching the Pearl ships hold their vigil. We say please and we say thank you. We teach our children to share. But we are also the descendants of those who crossed oceans against odds and stood on bridges against armies. Politeness is the costume of our convictions, not their replacement. 72 hours, she murmured. We'll need less. Commander Cole Maddox came back from the dark with the taste of copper and winter in his mouth. The cryopod earized open, and a fog of cold peeled away from him like old paint. He swung his legs to the deck and waited for his blood to remember its job. The bay around him was a cathedral of silence punctured by hisses and clicks as other pods blossomed. People he had trained with more closely than family crawled out of dreamless years, blinking into orders they had sworn an oath to obey. "This is Kestrel Control," a voice said over the bay speakers, a woman's voice he recognized before the name hit. Dr. Hana Akoy, chief architect of the Black Line. Protocol Janus confirmed, Continuum Incursion verified, Terrestrial Command green. Welcome back, wolves. Maddox smiled without humor. Bridge? He asked an ensign whose teeth were still chattering. The kid pointed. The old muscle memory took over. His steps fell into a cadence he had not practiced in years and never forgotten. The hangar doors groaned open, stone scraping against stone, and the bay's darkness receded like a tide. The Black Line hung beyond, 57 ships at anchor inside the hollowed asteroid, matte hulls drinking the light. They were not beautiful. They were the honesty of a hammer. Names ran down their flanks in paint so black it seemed a hole. Monument, Maddox's. Nightfall, Ark Royal because some traditions matter. Las Cruces, John Brown because other traditions matter more. Akoy met him at the access trunk, hair shaved close, eyes bright with the fire of someone who has been vindicated against the easy ridicule of peacetime. "Commander," she said, clasping his forearm. "They really came. They always come," he said. "Old powers hate unsupervised children." On the bridge of the monument, Lieutenant May Alvarez slid into the navigator's couch, flipping through screens with the appetite of a pianist, finally returned to a Steinway. "Reactor green, coil stable, EM hygiene with inspec," she reported. "Rail assemblies charged to 30%, cold plate temperatures nominal, we can sail, sir." Maddox's XO Isaac Volkov leaned close. "Rules of engagement?" he asked softly, the way a man asks about weather before a funeral. Maddox tapped the little brass coin he wore on a chain, its edges smoothed by 1,000 nervous thumbs. On one side, a compass rose. On the other, Lex Fides, Pieta's, law, faith, duty. "Same rules we drilled," he said. 5 of them. 1, we protect home first. 2, we harm as little as war allows. 3, we destroy capacity, not identity. 4, we accept surrender. 5, we never kneel. "Hard to be merciful at 10% of light speed," Volkov said. "That's why we brought chaplains and lawyers," Maddox said. "And why we trained until every shot felt like a vow." Akoy joined them, dropping a tablet on the tactical console. Schematics unfolded like calligraphy, coiled railguns the length of city blocks, drum magazines of tungsten carbide darts, missile farms sleeping under ablative armor, reactors that ran hot and quiet, hulls coated in an engineered metamaterial that turned plasma into a rumor. "Energy is poetry," she had once said in a classified lecture, "but mass is prose, and prose wins arguments." "One more thing," she added. "Black ships broadcast nothing unless we tell them to. They don't ping, they don't sing. They are shadows that refuse to explain themselves, make the continuum read the silence." In the ready room, Chaplain O'Rourke and Judge Advocate LT, Priya Banerjee waited with tablets and old books. O'Rourke wore a cross. Banerjee wore the Constitution in a pocket edition. They reminded Maddox of why the Black Line had taken an oath that was longer than the standard military pledge. It had clauses about last resorts and proportionality, about dignity and prisoners, about the unkillable concept of personhood. "War is the failure of trust," O'Rourke said quietly as crew filtered in for the short address they had each imagined through long sleep. "But it is not the failure of meaning. Remember who you are even when the hull shakes. Remember who they are even when they shoot first. Remember, Banerjee said, that law constrains force so that force can serve law. We are not an empire's instrument. We are a republic's shield. The monument shook itself awake. Valves sighed, pumps hummed, gyros spun up from the center out. Across the asteroid, other ships repeated the ritual of resurrection. Somewhere, deep in the stone, 1,000 printers ate powdered ore and exhaled spare parts with the patience of ants. Black line, Maddox said over the fleet channel. This is Monument Actual. We sail in 1 hour. We will make contact with the Continuum Vanguard in 16. Set your watches. Write your letters. He wrote his own 3 paragraphs to a niece who would read them someday in a classroom if he didn't come back. He told her the truth adults like to file smooth. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to place something above it. That peace requires guardians who dislike violence more than anyone and are therefore most fit to use it. That freedom is a word no enemy can pronounce on your behalf. At H+60, the asteroid's mouth opened to the unjudging dark. 57 ships drifted out, black on black, each leaving behind a wake of old dust and new resolve. Behind them, the machines kept printing. On some level, humanity had accepted a simple proposition: if peace is precious, pay for it in advance. On the long acceleration arc, Reyes' face appeared on the forward screen. "You are my sharp question," she said. "Ask it well." Maddox nodded once. "Aye, Admiral." The Continuum Vanguard waited beyond Neptune, a necklace of pale stars against the night. Their formation was art, circles within spirals, a geometry hinting at centuries of fighting by etiquette. They radiated confidence the way hearths radiate heat. They had brought the laws of their galaxy with them and assumed we would prefer citations to choices. "Human vessels," the translator chimed into the monument's bridge. "You approach sovereign continuum assets. Withdraw to the cradle world. Your development will be curated at an appropriate pace. Disobedience will be resolved." "Open a channel," Maddox said. He kept his hands still because hands want to answer insults by themselves. "High Legate Iscarel," he said when the crystal face appeared, its planes rippling with a color somewhere between pity and contempt. "This is Commander Cole Maddox of the Earth Ship Monument Black Line. You have 60 seconds to break orbit and clear our system." "Your threats are unfashionable," the legate replied. "We are immune to rocks and fumes." Alvarez's countdown ticked in the corner of the screen. 60 became 30, 30 became 10. When the number reached 0, the black line spoke in the language it had come to teach: mass. Railguns thumped in a slow, apocalyptic rhythm you felt in your bones more than heard. Darts the size of tree trunks left the coils at a fraction of light speed and smeared into invisible heat at their own passing. The first salvo entered continuum shields engineered to drink energies and vomit them into ground. The shields obligingly drank, and then choked, because no one had told them how to swallow a mountain moving like a thought. A flower of shattered light blossomed where the lead ship had been. 2 more lost their forward sections with the cartoon suddenness of magic tricks performed by physics. Plasma lances answered, white spears stitching the dark, and when they reached black hulls they simply dimmed the metamaterial, converting fury into fatigue. Heat bled into sink mass with the slow, greedy satisfaction of a desert consuming rain. "PD going hot," Volkov said, voice a drumbeat under the chaos. Point defense cannons stitched webs that chewed exotic matter munitions into confetti. The monument rolled in a way no continuum captain anticipated from something so heavy, presenting an edge like a boxer slipping a hook. The second salvo went out. In the tactical plot, enemy icons flickered and died like bad bulbs. "Transmit offer of quarter on general band," Banerjee said, already typing. "In continuum trade can't where possible." Maddox nodded. On the nearby screen, their message repeated: "Surrender is honorable. We will not mistreat prisoners. Disable engines and broadcast distress." The words carried a history no Continuum officer had studied because their wars usually ended in negotiated seating arrangements, not wreckage. They had rules, but their rules assumed equality of premise, not difference of kind. A survivor ship flared drives and ran for the deep. Maddox let it go because sometimes mercy is also escalation, the kind that arrives as news. He focused instead on the carrier at Vector 1-4. Magazines, he asked. Missiles green, Alvarez said. Targeting solutions good enough to embarrass my professors. Loose a cloud, Maddox said. In Old Navy doctrine, you fired storms, not raindrops. 2,000 smart darts scattered, each with a brain simple enough to be stubborn and a warhead simple enough to be reliable. Point defense is a contest of arithmetic. The Black Line had studied arithmetic. The carrier died quieter than anyone expected. One moment it was a doctrine node, the next it was threads. The monument rolled again, giving her cooler plates to the newest plasma curtain, and Maddox felt something like grief for the beauty of their ships, for the skill of their crews, for the certainty that had kept them arrogant. Grief is not the enemy of resolve, it is its guardian. Multiple Continuum lifeboats, sensors reported. Broadcasting. Tag and rescue, Maddox said. Yes, rescue. He caught Volkov's glance. If we can't carry the weight of compassion when we are strongest, we will not deserve compassion when we are weak. In medical, O'Rourke stood at the shoulder of a surgeon as a crystal being's shattered planes were bound in a polymer cast that would hold until someone from its people could teach human medics how to help better. The alien trembled, humming in a key our instruments did not know how to label. O'Rourke spoke softly anyway. There are languages older than speech. Transmit this to the fleeing ship, Banerjee said. You will be permitted to clear the limit. Carry our message, sovereignty for sovereignty. We will not be managed. Do not wake the parents and expect them to crawl. Poetic, Volkov murmured. Banerjee shrugged. Law remembers truth better when it rhymes. The field quieted. Where 14 ships had pinned a planet between mathematics and decree, wreckage drifted. The monument steadied on a new heading, and in Reyes' command bunker, the altimeter on the pit of her stomach ticked down. Phase 2, she said. Cut their roads, quiet their foundries, broadcast the difference between fear and respect. Back on the bridge, Alvarez dimmed the screens. She looked very young for a moment. Sir, she said, do you think they'll understand? Maddox watched a lifeboat tumble, its beacon chirping like a bird that had never learned to be ashamed of singing. Understanding follows consequence, he said. It always has. The Continuum could replace ships. It could not easily replace certainty. News travels strangely in an old empire. At first, the story was dismissed as an anomaly, then as a clever ambush, then as sabotage. But footage from 100 angles leaked anyway. Black ships swallowing plasma like darts, turning doctrine into debris. On 1,000 worlds, the word human shifted registers, from curiosity to caution, from caution to calculation. The Black Line's next moves were not a march, but a map. Strike groups appeared at supply junctions and whispered ruin into refineries. They hit relay towers and left humanitarian corridors. They planted beacons that translated themselves into whatever grammar a species used for plea. Evacuate this grid before this hour. When Continuum fleets arrived in parade order, they found empty space and a message spelled in debris. Stop harming us. We will stop harming you. You can't fight an idea with firings. Akoi told a panel of skeptical colonels in a closed brief relayed from Kestrel. You fight it with a better idea. Our better idea is consent. She talked about how energy doctrines overfit to their own elegance, how kinetic heresy forced adaptation, how the point of a shield is not to glow but to protect. Engineers have a way of saying philosophy without admitting it. On Earth, the war threaded itself through a republic's rituals. Congress debated in classified session and also in ways their voters could hear. The president stood at a lectern older than his office and said, "We will not conquer. We will not be curated. We will not let others define our place among the stars. We will fight to create a peace that requires our permission." It was the kind of sentence that becomes a civics problem in future classrooms. Identify the claim, its ethical basis, the risks it courts. Protests bloomed because free nations allow dissent even when the enemy is watching. Students carried signs that read "Make peace with dignity" and another set that read "Bring them home." Reyes watched footage of both and felt proud. Authoritarian comfort is cheaper than democratic courage. She preferred the price. Letters arrived aboard the monument by the thousand, compressed and encoded, the long umbilical between home and the people who volunteer to keep it. A kid from Fresno wrote to Alvarez about a science fair project inspired by railguns. A rabbi in Des Moines wrote to Volkov about wrestling angels and ethics. A class of first graders in Lagos sent drawings of spaceships rescuing alien cats. Alvarez taped hers to the side console near her station, a paper sun in a room of instruments. Banerjee drafted the Black Lines rules of restraint, published them across human space, and translated them, imperfectly, urgently into Continuum trade cant. We do not target non-combatants. We will announce when we can. We accept surrender without condition. We hold prisoners with dignity. We destroy infrastructure only as needed for defense. Continuum media called it propaganda. Then a convoy warned to divert 3 hours before a raid arrived intact by a longer road. Propaganda that saves lives learns a better name. Meanwhile, diplomacy did what guns cannot. The Andoran Compact declared neutrality and closed its gates to both sides, citing a human clause about the right to be left alone. The Proxima trade union published a statement recognizing Earth's sovereignty and, more practically, offered docking at a discount if you didn't arrive with someone's war fleet behind you. The Continuum had expected fear to concentrate allies. It found fear diffused them. Inside the Continuum Council, the debates turned weirdly human. A vapor being argued that burning 1,000 years of custom to preserve control was not preservation. A machine route diplomat suggested renegotiating empire into federation, only to be accused of treason to unity. High Legate Iscarel watched footage of black ships rescuing Continuum lifeboats and felt something bright and unwelcome in its facets. Uncertainty about moral superiority. On the monument, O'Rourke held voluntary evening circles where crew spoke into a silence that respected them. "I don't hate them," a gunner admitted. "That scares me. Hate makes it easier." "Good," O'Rourke said. "Don't make it easy, make it right." Maddox wrote a memo Reyes forwarded straight to the president. "Strategy is the art of changing minds with pressure. We can break fleets. We should aim higher. Break the habit that made them bring fleets to people like us in the first place." He outlined a plan that looked like madness until you remembered the last 3 weeks. Feints to pull Continuum assets rimward, sabotage of 2 central slipways, a broadcast to minor powers offering fixed trade corridors guaranteed by human ships and human reputations. He put the words "no tribute" in bold. In schoolrooms from Manila to Memphis, teachers updated lesson plans on the fly. Dr. Sunita Rao, historian, recorded a lecture viewed by 50 million in a weekend. Empires call their order peace. Republics call their consent peace. The difference is who signs first. She told stories of Thucydides and Frederick Douglass, of the March on Washington and the Berlin airlift, and because she was honest, of mistakes Americans had made when our reach exceeded our wisdom. It mattered that we learned publicly. Out past Saturn, shipyard drones unscrolled hull plates like prayer rugs. 200, 250. The count rose, a number that meant less by itself than as argument. The monument rotated slowly and the starfields slid, ancient light passing weapons too new for language to hold comfortably. Alvarez sat with her hands folded, a discipline she had learned when she was 12, and her father taught her to let the rifle breathe before you do. "Signal from Earth," comms said. "Admiral Reyes requests status for Operation Concord." "Tell her the choir is in tune," Maddox said. He let himself imagine the last act, a ring of black ships around the Continuum's shining capital. Weapons cold while words did their work, a new treaty built on an old sentence, Leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. A crueler story would be shorter. A better one would be harder. He stood, stretched, and looked at the drawings. One of them showed a stick figure alien holding hands with a stick figure human. Neither had knees in the picture because the kid who drew it hadn't figured out knees yet. "Plot the course," he said. "Slow and careful. We're writing something they might have to read twice." He touched the brass coin at his throat and felt the compass rise to meet his thumb. Let's go teach. The war had entered its cruel mathematics. For the Continuum, war had always been a chessboard. They moved fleets like carved pieces, predictable, ritualistic. Even their defeats were ceremonial, a lost skirmish here, a negotiated surrender there. Empires like theirs did not truly fall in battle, they eroded through politics. But humanity was not a ceremonial opponent. When the black line struck at the Centauri slipgate, it wasn't with rhetoric or long communiques, it was with raw calculation. The Centauri Gate had been the hub of the Continuum slipstream network for 900 years. Its spires channeled the energy of a dying star, binding it into corridors of folded space that allowed fleets to cross sectors in hours. To destroy it was unthinkable, which is why humanity destroyed it. The black line descended out of silence. 50 ships in wedge formation, their matte hulls vanishing into the void until they fired. Railgun slugs the size of commuter trains screamed across the gulf. They weren't elegant, they weren't subtle, but they were relentless. The first salvo ripped through the outer pylons. The second tore open the anchor ring. The third delivered the final lesson. Even the most permanent symbols of power are temporary against determined will. From the surface of nearby colonies, terrified Continuum citizens watched their greatest beacon collapse into fragments, burning against the black as if the galaxy itself had caught fire. Inside the Nexus Council chamber, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted, accused, wept. "The humans are mad," hissed one crystalline envoy. "No rational species destroys gates, they are lifelines for all." "They are not mad," replied Elder Marath, her silver limbs trembling. "They are sending a lesson carved in physics. They will not be controlled. Not by infrastructure, not by empire, not by us." Back on Earth, Admiral Reyes addressed Congress. "Why destroy Centauri Gate? Because it was never neutral. It was a leash around our neck. If we want peace on our terms, we must teach the Continuum what we learned in our own history. Liberty is not given, it is taken. Every tyrant believes his monument's eternal. But Rome fell. Babylon fell. Even the pyramids erode." She paused, letting the silence carry her conviction. The Continuum thought we were too young to understand history. They were wrong. We understand it better than they do because we lived it. We are made of it. And indeed, humanity was made of it. Our revolutions, our wars of independence, our stubborn refusal to be classified or curated, every echo of history now became doctrine in the stars. Commander Maddox wrote in his log that night aboard the monument, "Empires always confuse obedience with stability. They believe if the pieces stand still, the board endures. But they forget that sometimes the table itself can be flipped. Today, we flip the table. Tomorrow, they will learn the pieces no longer matter." The destruction of the Centauri Gate wasn't only tactical, it was symbolic. The galaxy now knew humanity would not merely survive, humanity would teach. And the first lesson was simple: no structure, no tradition, no power is sacred when survival and freedom are at stake. The Nexus had been designed to be untouchable. It orbited Continuum Prime, heart of the Empire, its crystalline spires reaching into space like frozen lightning. Generations of artists, philosophers, and rulers had called it the crown of galactic civilization. To stand inside its halls was to feel the weight of 10,000 years of order pressing down like gravity. Now that crown trembled. 217 black line ships slipped into position, forming a dark shell around the Nexus. They did not announce themselves. They did not parade. They simply were there, and that was enough. On the station, the council chamber dissolved into near panic. The delegates had always spoken with certainty. Now their voices cracked with fear. "They cannot surround us." barked Legate Iskerl, his facets dim with strain. They dare not fire upon the Nexus. It would be suicide. Elder Marath swayed, her limbs shedding silver flakes. And yet they are here. 47 ships defend us against 200. Do you not see? They have broken our certainty already. Perhaps they do not need to fire. Perhaps being here is enough. For the first time in 10 millennia, the Council considered surrender. Aboard the monument, Maddox studied the tactical map. The Nexus glowed in the center, a jewel surrounded by his fleet. Its beauty was undeniable, but he saw past the light. He saw the truth. Beauty without justice is only vanity. "Sir," Lieutenant Alvarez said quietly, "the Nexus has no heavy defenses. One volley could erase it." "One volley," Maddox replied, "and we are conquerors. That is not why we're here. We came to break their chains, not steal their crown." Admiral Reyes' image filled the screen. She looked exhausted, but her voice was iron. "This is the moment, Cole, not of weapons, but of meaning. Humanity doesn't fight to replace the continuum. We fight so no one can ever again demand our surrender." The channel to the Council opened. For the first time, humanity's face filled the chamber of galactic authority. Maddox stood tall, scars visible, eyes hard. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply spoke. "You came to Earth with an ultimatum, kneel or die. You believed we would bow as countless others before us. You were wrong. We are not your subjects. We are not your children. We are not your cattle. We are human, and we will not kneel." Some delegates spat words of fury. Others wept. But Elder Marath lifted her trembling arms and whispered the question that no one had dared speak in centuries. "What do you want?" Maddox answered without hesitation. "We want what every people has wanted since the dawn of history. The right to live free, to make our mistakes, to choose our destiny. Nothing more, nothing less." In that moment, the galaxy shifted, not because of missiles or railguns or nuclear fire, but because a truth older than empires had been spoken aloud in the chamber that once claimed to speak for all. Freedom is not permission granted by the powerful. It is the birthright of the living. The siege of the Nexus had begun not with plasma, but with words. Yet those words carried more weight than any barrage. The Council had thought humanity dangerous because of its weapons. They had not yet understood. It was humanity's convictions that made us truly terrifying. The Continuum Council chamber had never felt so fragile. Its vaulted ceilings of crystal and light had been designed to inspire awe, to remind every delegate that authority here was eternal. But eternity cracked when faced with silence from 200 black ships waiting beyond the walls. For 3 days, the Council had debated without pause. Delegates hissed accusations, shouted denials, and wept for the ruin of a system that had endured for 10 millennia. But none of their words changed the fact. The humans had surrounded their crown, and the humans had not fired. That restraint was more frightening than any volley. "They are terrorists," spat Legate Iskerl, his body pulsing with broken light. "If we give them recognition, the entire order dissolves." Elder Marath raised her silver arms. "Perhaps it is already dissolving. Perhaps the order was never peace, only submission. And now that submission has cracked." Arguments raged. Yet outside the chamber, more troubling news arrived every hour. Continuum fleets cut off from supply lanes, colonies refusing to pay tribute, allied powers declaring neutrality and even opening trade with humans. The edifice of empire, which had seemed so indestructible, was now riddled with fractures. It was Banerjee, the human judge advocate, who first placed words on the negotiating table. She spoke not with fire, but with clarity. "We propose terms not of conquest, but of coexistence. Humanity will be recognized as sovereign over all its systems. Continuum fleets will withdraw from our borders. Reparations will be paid for the attack on Sol. And finally, a new interstellar accord. No species may claim dominion over another without consent." "Absurd," cried an insectoid delegate. "This undoes the very foundation of our council." "Then perhaps your foundation was unjust," Banerjee replied calmly. "And if that is so, its collapse is not tragedy, it is justice." The words hung in the chamber like a blade. For the first time, alien delegates faced the possibility that their millennia of peace had in fact been oppression. That realization struck deeper than any missile. Admiral Reyes appeared via holo feed from Washington, her figure flanked by the American flag and the banner of the United Nations. She did not smile. "We did not come to destroy you. If we wanted that, the Nexus would already be dust. We came to make plain a truth written in our own history. Freedom is not requested. It is declared." Some delegates still raged. Others began to fold. At last, Elder Marath's trembling voice silenced the hall. "We sign not because we believe you righteous, not because we believe you merciful, but because survival demands it. The old order is broken. Let the galaxy be remade." The Treaty of the Nexus was etched that day, its terms sealed into the Continuum's records and transmitted across the stars. For the first time in 10,000 years, an empire that had never known equal had been forced to treat another as such. Commander Maddox stood on the promenade of the Nexus as the documents were signed. Around him stretched towers built to dwarf him, but he felt no smaller. For weight is not measured in height, it is measured in conviction. Later in his private log he wrote, "This is not victory. Victory implies an ending. This is a beginning, a fragile one, and it will demand generations of vigilance. But for the first time, our children will grow in a galaxy where the word equal means something. And that is enough for now." The Treaty of Equals was born not from love nor even respect, but from necessity. Yet history often remembers beginnings more than motives, and this beginning would echo for centuries. The black line did not linger. Once the treaty was sealed, they withdrew in silence, their matte hulls fading into the dark as if they had been a dream. They left no occupation force, raised no banners. They returned to their hidden shipyards, their colonies, their homes, because humanity had never fought to rule, it had fought to live free. Across the galaxy, whispers grew into proverbs. On minor worlds long bound under the Continuum's thumb, children asked their elders why the Council had surrendered. The elders answered in hushed tones, because the humans reminded them of something they had forgotten, that survival is stronger than ceremony. On Earth, the war was already becoming history. Schools taught about the day the ultimatum came and the day humanity said no. Teachers told their students that courage was not born from certainty, but from conviction. Churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples echoed the same theme. Freedom is a gift only if you are willing to pay its price. Admiral Reyes retired quietly to a garden on Mars. When asked by journalists how she felt about breaking a 10,000-year-old empire, she smiled faintly and said, "I didn't break it. We simply reminded them that no empire outlasts the will of the free." Commander Maddox, older and grayer, wrote only a single line in his memoirs. "Never ask a free people to kneel unless you are ready to fall before they do." That line alone was enough to be carved into monuments on half a dozen colonies. The Continuum endured, but it was no longer the unquestioned power. Treaties replaced decrees. Negotiations replaced ultimatums. And though resentment smoldered, so too did a new principle, equality, fragile and uncertain, but alive. Philosophers argued for centuries about whether humanity had saved the galaxy or doomed it to endless war. But history, impartial as the stars, recorded one truth with clarity. The day the Continuum demanded Earth's submission, Earth refused. And in refusing, it changed the galaxy forever. For generations afterward, in the marketplaces of distant worlds, younglings would whisper a phrase whenever someone threatened them with overwhelming power. A phrase born not of fear, but of awe. A phrase carved into the fabric of history by one species that refused to bow. "Do not wake the sleeping parents."